Bring it, Steven. Good, man, how are you?
Okay, this is the Building Worlds Making and Breaking the Rules panel. I'm going to hand you to my panelists to introduce themselves, and I guess I'll go first. I'm Dave Ulrich. I was a publisher at Malibu Comics and was one of the founding fathers of the Ultraverse. So I got to sit in a room with legends and make cool stuff and get to see it all come to life in a number of different ways, which was really gratifying. Let's start with Marc down at the far end.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marc Bernardin. I'm a television writer. I've written on shows like Alphas and Treadstone and Castle Rock and Carnival Row. And I also do two podcasts, one with Kevin Smith called FATMAN Beyond, another with Tricia Helfer called the Battlestar Galactica Cast.
Nice. Hey, I'm Steve Seagle. I'm part of Man of Action. We're a LA and New York based company. We actually world build for a living. We made up Ben 10, we made up Big Hero 6, the new Mega Man show. We have a show called Power Players coming on Cartoon Network. So we do a lot of animation. We also do a little bit of TV and a little bit of film and comics.
Hi, I'm Amanda Deibert, and I write for TV and for comic books. Comics-wise, some Wonder Woman, Teen Titans Go, DC Superhero Girls, and right now I am writing for the new He-Man and the Masters of the Universe for Netflix, but not the Kevin Smith one, the other one.
What a world where we have to differentiate our He-Man.
Who knew?
I know. We won, guys. The nerds won. Hi, my name is Gerry Duggan. I write primarily comic books. Probably on the panel today, if we'll talk about world building. My current gig is a book called Marauders in the new X-Men universe. And I write Savage Avengers for Marvel too. We probably won't talk about that.
Cool. So, in terms of world building, I think there's sort of a couple of things that come in mostly through the comics area. I mean, when we talk about comics, it's like things were born organically and grew up around it. I think even the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a little bit like that, right? Now, the success of Iron Man, nothing else gets built on top of it. And then there's the ridiculous thing that we try to do with the Ultraverse is sitting up, a bunch of guys down in the room, form a committee, and I think there's been some other attempts since then to like build a sandbox and then let people play in it. Do you guys have any thoughts in terms of better, worse, how you approach it when you have to be involved in it creatively?
I mean, I think that television is very much that put a bunch of people in a room and see if you can figure out a way to build a house, right? TV is a house. TV is like, here's this framework and structure that can hopefully contain story, and you're hopefully putting as many doors as you can in the house that you can open and find opportunities behind. And that is very much not like we're making it up as you go, even though we're totally making it up as you go, but you're trying to have some shared understanding of the world that you're all going to be telling stories in, right? Like, does it have magic? How does the magic work? Are there elves? What do the elves do? Are there dark elves, light elves, blah, blah, blah? Are there robots? How do the robots work? Is there gas for robots? Like, just stuff that at some point the stories will require you to answer. And then there's things that you can just decide we're not going to talk about. Like, how does time travel work in this world? It's magic. We're not going to have rules for it. It's just magic. You know, which is the thing that like the Marvel Universe has done. Like, oh sure, we can pretend that we know how this quantum universe tunnel thing works, but it's just magic.
Yeah, and that's the right thing to do. That's like Indiana Jones shooting the swordsman, where you go, we just got to get past that in order to have more fun. Not everything needs to be explained.
No, but it is, I think when we start, we actually became world building based because people were like, make us a cartoon or make us a video game. And then they come back 2 years later and like, oh, you know that cartoon, now we need the video game. And it's, you needed to do that all at once. So a lot of it is world building, like make up a lot more than you need, answer all those questions, decide where the rules are. So we just try to have a lot of ideas quickly, worry about whether they're bad or good after that. So just burying yourself with a bunch of people in a room, answering questions.
Yeah, I think to that point, Stephen, I think it's about the demands of what story you're telling, right? Like, if you're George R.R. Martin and you're just literally writing novels, then you can slowly make up, you can be living in this tunnel, right? Where like, what does the story need me to reveal the world? And until the story gets me there, I don't have to worry about High Valyria and, you know, Dorne and whatever. Like, I'm here in Winterfell. All I need to know is about Winterfell. When the chapter gets me to that, then I'll worry about that. But if there's like 19 departments and 4 different corporations looking for shit that needs to be like, oh, we gotta make a mobile game and a video game and a cartoon and a movie, and the demands become more than just your desire might allow.
Yeah, and it's also, sometimes if you have to answer that question because you come upon the problem, it looks like a problem you solved the minute you came upon the problem. So it's oftentimes better to have it in advance.
No, yeah, I would agree. I mean, like, I find that when I'm doing things, I usually don't really worry about it until I get to that point, but I don't know that that's actually the best bet.
You know, what's interesting too is comic books, what are they, 90 or 100 days, and then they're out of your life, they're off to a printer. Nothing else really has that velocity. What's been interesting recently, because there's, you know, now everything feels like it's big business, is occasionally being asked to drop in and do writing on video games, and then all of a sudden you're writing with people that aren't writers, and that's been like a challenge for me the last year or two of doing things where the language, the core language isn't there, and they wouldn't understand like putting the gun on the mantle early because you're going to need it later, or just basic stuff like that. So it's been fun to world build with world builders, and then it's also been really fun to world build with people that don't necessarily like have that same toolbox, and it, you know, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's a bummer.
When you approach a story Bible from the creative side, well, how many of you have been involved in like creating the story Bible versus like being the victim of the story Bible?
I've done both.
Yeah, both.
Okay, good. So how is that approach different in terms of getting the results of the story Bible, which is the stories that need to be told for the package you're putting in?
I think we're building a story Bible for writers that we're going to hire. So and everybody in my company is a writer to start with. So we're trying to give a roadmap. And
Those are some named writers, right? I mean, we're talking about
Joe Kelly, Joe Casey, Duncan Rouleau. He can draw, so he gets up. And me, who?
Steve who?
That's why we operate under an assumed name, because it's even less known than our actual names. But no, it's trying to give enough information that somebody who gets hired feels like they're not adrift. If you're on like a new show, for example, a new TV show, you might have to write episode 4 and you haven't even seen any, it's not even shot yet. So it's trying to give them enough suspension of reality, enough material that they can build a house of their own and let them go. And the tonnage of that varies. You know, I think every Bible we do has stuff about characters, stuff about locations, stuff about rules, physics, magic, it's that kind of fantasy stuff or science stuff. And it's just answering enough questions that they don't have to call you every 5 minutes and ask 1,000 questions you could have answered in a room by banging out a Bible for a couple of weeks. Does everybody know what a Bible is? Not the Bible, it's just a show Bible, a document with all the
Story Bible, the Robert E.
origin
Bible,
story.
Right.
And sometimes that discussion, right, you realize you're having a discussion that needs to happen on the page, where you go, oh, that's a story, you know, something, a question that someone has or a rule that needs to be established, you go, well, that's going to happen in universe now. It kind of makes your job easier.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes I brought a visual aid, so I have to use it because I carried it upstairs. Yeah, it's a toy. So this is Masco. This is a show we have coming on Sunday, the 19th on Cartoon Network after Ben 10. Please watch. But Masco it's a toy who comes to life, and he loves goulash. That was something that happened in one of the scripts we wrote. And immediately our co-financiers, I won't name the countries, France and Spain, we're obsessed with the idea, why is a toy eating? Toys don't eat, toys don't need food. And we had to literally go back into the Bible and explain why toys are eating. They don't. They just like it. It's fun, and they see humans doing it. They're like, oh, we're going to do that too. So they're just eating, and food is just falling out of their mouths. But it's fun that he likes gumbo, and he likes goulash, and he likes all that stuff. So you either have to create a physics logic for it, a science explanation for it, or you have to get rid of the fun. So we kept the fun and wrote into the Bible why toys eat. I'm glad I brought this upstairs.
I mean, the perils of world building. I mean, I've been in a couple of different writers' rooms. The first season of Castle Rock, we showed up on day one, and it's, okay, so what's this world that we're playing in? What is this town like? What are does this town have ghosts? Does it have devils? Like what? And we wanted to feel like a town that was kind of in the echoes of tragedy. Like everybody there had lost somebody because it's freaking Castle Rock and bad shit happens there. And we spent almost a month just trying to figure out, like, what does it feel like? What is this town? Who stays behind when every third person gets murdered? You know, and that's valuable work.
The murderer.
The murderer, right? Then it's just like, but there's nobody left to murder. And so that's all valuable time, and that's valuable real estate, and that's work that needs to be done. But you could do that work forever.
Yeah.
Like you could just keep on building to the point where you're never writing a story, you're never going forward, because you're just like redefining the parameters and the borders of the world that you're building. And the temptation to stay there and do that is real and intense. And I have fallen victim to it on a number of projects, which is like, I could build this world forever and do and never write the story. And I think that lots of people get there too, because they think that they need to have everything before they can start writing the story. And I think the story does, to a certain degree, dictate the world you're going to tell the story in. And learning to liberate yourself from that, the sort of the Scylla and Charybdis of just like, oh, I'm just going to be here, trapped here forever, is the job, right? Like that's, unless you can pull out of that gravitational field, you're never going to actually write anything.
Did you know where the exteriors for Castle Rock would be yet, or that you guys were ahead of that location?
We were ahead of the location. Like
Okay,
it
that's
was,
stuff too.
you know, I mean, we knew we wanted to feel it needed to be Maine. It needed to
Right.
feel like Maine. It needed to have that like kind of depressed gloom in everything, and that kind of like rock and clapboard feel of everything. But it was only about halfway through the room of the first season that they found, oh, we're going to do Orange, Massachusetts. Why there? Well, because it turns out that's less than an hour outside of Boston, and we can cast out of Boston, and it becomes like a union thing at that point. And then once you see the town, it's like, okay, that gets to be the barn, that gets to be this. It's, what can we put in here? And that's awesome. And we can own that house. Like, we're going to buy that house from those people, aren't we? Yes, we can destroy that house. It's awesome. But it's only like once you get into it, you start realizing the story asks us to have a thing we can destroy, and we found the house we can destroy. But then I've been in shows like Carnival Row showed up on season 2, and it was the weirdest thing because it's a show, season 2 of a room, you're not spending that much time doing that world building. There's a room, there's a season that I can watch, and like, this is what it looks like. But there's no IP that it was based on. Like Travis Beacham built this world in his head and had been living with it for 16 years, so he was the IP. So we'd ask him questions like, all right, so we've got to get from the Berg to New Freehold. How far of a sail is that? He'd say 5 days. And I'd say, we haven't seen either of these places before. There's no map. Could it be 3 days? It's 5 days, Mark. Dude, just roll with it. What if it's 4 days? Like it makes the story, it's 5 days. Otherwise, the rest of the world doesn't work. All right, man.
Those are guardrails.
He built it.
Yeah, he built it, he knows.
That's
It's like, all right, so what's the religion like in this world? It's like, funny you should ask. And then like 4 hours later, he explains like, they're like, well, this was the Passionist version, and here's this version, and they split up about 400 years ago, and now there's this church. I'm like, dude, nobody will see this, ever. I got it though.
That's amazing.
So where in your experience has world building gone wrong? I'm sort of looking for a funny story or two, but in general, you're building something and it goes horribly wrong.
Well, I don't know if I necessarily have something that's horribly wrong.
Oh, come on.
All right, who's heard of Deadpool?
But it's tough when you are in a shared universe that comics presents, where sometimes you can, on the worst days I feel like a custodian, and on the best days I'm like the caretaker. I'm like the museum, lovingly caretaking some of these characters. But the long and the short of it was I did this long Deadpool run, and I knew I was leaving, and I didn't know what was going to continue on, but I want to leave a clean slate. I want to be a good caretaker. So I burned everything down. You know, all of the relationships, all of the actual physical places that came up over the years, and that felt so good. Being an arsonist was so good.
This panel is now about world destroying.
Yeah, world destroying. But sort of going, hey, eventually someone's going to break the toys. It also felt very Deadpool to break those toys, but that was my sort of experience of going, I don't know, like it was a little bit more heartbreaking.
So you got a backhoe and basically dug up the sandbox and drummed in the truck.
But really giving, the gift was letting the next crew know or decide what he would even remember. Because there was so much stuff, you felt like you wanted to inherit as much of a clean slate as possible to go do something new.
Do you have any experiences like that, Amanda?
Not of world destroying. No, but I would say to piggyback off, sometimes when you are dealing with IP that has been around for so long, and then everything has been done, and then everything has been undone, and then everything has been redone, then they're almost, in some ways you're starting over, and in some ways you can't. Like the first time that I ever wrote Wonder Woman, I felt a lot of, there's the weight of the history of this character and this world, this universe, but also like sometimes she flies, sometimes she has an invisible jet, sometimes there are all these rules, but then there aren't, and that I guess is the closest I've come to like a problem in world building. Is like then you have to like decide like whose version historically are you going to build off of when you're doing your own version? Like where are you starting from? What are your parameters for this beloved character that everyone has very strong opinions about and will get extremely furious at you for like doing the wrong one? And there are fundamentals that don't change, but even her origin has changed dramatically. So I guess that's the closest I've had to like a problem. It's just when you're dealing with other people's worlds, other people's characters, something that you're not creating yourself and setting the rules for, and then you're playing within those parameters, that can get a little convoluted, I guess.
I have two stories, I'll make them quick. One is, sometimes it's the thing you made up. So we made up Ben 10. Ben 10's been on for about 13 or 14 years. About 4 years ago, we realized that the Ben 10 fans were your age. Yay, excitement, but cartoons don't continue if they don't have kids watching them, because kids are the ones who buy merchandise, and that's what pays for cartoons. So we were like, well, we have to reboot this. We have to make him 10 years old again. I think he had got maybe like 35. He was on unemployment. I don't know what was happening. It was all good, though. It was well done, but it was a little too old to get a 7-year-old excited about it. So we rebuilt it, and we're the guys who built it the first time. And, our 21-year-old fans who grew up with it are like, this sucks, you ruined everything. And it's like, it's actually just the original one again. It's the same as when it started, and you loved it, but then you aged with it. So sometimes you can do it yourself, and it doesn't make any difference. If it's not the thing people love, they don't love it anymore. Yeah. Though they can fall back in love with it again. Like we did the Spider-Man cartoon, and everybody, this is the worst ever, and by the end they're like, oh, we like it. So that was okay. But my horror story is comic books, and it's also X-Men, which is that Joe Kelly and I took over the 2X books after a very long run of mostly locked creators. And we took a month, we met in California, we built, you have to build a new world for X-Men every time you start on it, because it's like a whole start over. Some things stay the same, but you have to detail it out. So it took a month, we came up with this big plan. Marvel's like, we love it. We each did one issue of our respective books, and then Marvel was at a very bad financial time. That's changed. And so they got new owners, and they're like, oh, that plan you did, that's gone. Now we've already done an issue. They're like, that's gone, build something else. So we started again. We took another month while we're working on the next issue of our run. We built a new world out, another year plan. We got that issue drawn, and somebody else took over Marvel. And they're like, that plan is gone now too. And we're like, but there's 2 issues done, one for the plan that you killed, and another for the next plan you killed, and we have to both keep those and change everything. And that happened 2 more times in the year and a half we were on those books. That sucked.
That's brutal.
I will, rather than tell one of my own horror stories, I'm going to shit on something else. Did anybody ever see Bright on Netflix? The Will Smith, like, there's orcs and fairies and elves, but it's also urban and weird. So in this world, the idea had been that the mythological creatures showed up like 300 years ago, and and some of which turned into like, you know, the moneyed folk and the refineries of the whatever, super high class, and then the rest turned into like the slave labor of America. I'm like, okay, sure, let's run with this. But then there's still ghettos, and those ghettos still have black people in them. And I'm like, well then, but what were they doing while the orcs were doing all the slave work? Like, why is there still like a depressed economy for people of color if they didn't do that work? Like, it's one of those, if you have one idea and you feel like it's awesome and crystal and whatever, but then you're gonna start drilling down into it and seeing if it's gonna be social and economic and about the fundamental like tenets of what makes a culture work. You gotta go all the way down. It's like, why is there still this ghetto? And who's living in the ghetto? And why? And that was a question that apparently nobody involved wanted to ask. They just thought it was super cool that like Will Smith walked out to his lawn in like South Central and lived next to an orc, and they both were singing the same hip hop music because why not? And like, I just sat there like 10 minutes in going, nope. This isn't how you do this. You could do this if you wanted to, make it really interesting. They didn't want to. They just wanted this thing. So don't do that.
Although, oddly the first compelling thing now, I'm like, oh, I should go watch that. Put this in my eyes.
It is a cautionary tale of like how not to build a world that makes any sense at all.
And now I do want to see the train run into the wall, right?
It's beautiful.
Right after Cats.
Oh, now and forever. I can't wait for like the 10 years from now oral histories of how that happened. And just like, guys, we thought Cats was a great idea, right? Yeah, but okay, so the cats are wearing clothes. Who's making the clothes? I don't know. Why is that cat wearing a cat suit? Who unzips the cat suit? Do we have more cat hair under the cat suit? Or I don't know. How big are these cats? Because there's like statues on the street that are like life-size, but the cats are standing under them like normal-sized people, and there are buildings that have cat names on them. Who built the buildings? They don't have thumbs. How do you do this? Why do cats have boobs? I can't figure out why these cats have boobs. They're cats, right? Cats.
Just Google Cats pitch meeting, and there's a guy who's already done this.
Done that
It's
work.
pretty good.
It's like maybe someday the kids will just think that they were gifts, and then they'll be shocked that there was like a whole movie. Like, why'd they do the movie? What? I don't understand.
For the gifts.
I did hear there was no click track when they made the movie.
No.
And so in edit, they had a real problem of going like, this guy's singing something totally different than everyone else. You know, they had a hard time cutting it after.
Nor was anybody wearing mocap suits. So they had to make all of those people CG who were not wearing the stuff you need to make things CG. So like there was a print that went out to 3,000 theaters that had like a dude in a sweatshirt in the background, and like Judi Dench's hands were still human hands because there were no green dots on the hands. We didn't know oh shit, they need to be cat hands. Okay, let's go put that in the theater.
It is wild. It does. I think it's the first time a film has gotten like a software update.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like midway through they're replacing film.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your panel with Cats.
Cats!
Now and forever.
Now and forever. In your hearts and minds.
Well, do we have any questions in the audience? We still got a good amount of time, but I don't want to run short.
Because we could do 20 minutes on cats.
Oh, please, we can do much more.
Angelical even me.
You talked about getting like holding the gravitational force and like continuing to build. Like, how do you know when to start writing? Like, when do you know, like, all right, I have enough stuff right now?
Question is, when does the story, when does the Bible building end and the story building begin? I think is the question. At what point in the process?
For me, it's I end up writing a Bible until I can't wait to start writing the thing. You know, like when you're like, I want to start putting words in these characters' mouths. I want to start doing the actual work. But for me, it's a bit like pretend your characters are in a car, right? And the car is driving down the road, and that road is in the world. And you can only see, the characters can only see as much as the headlights can show you. You don't necessarily need to build more world than those headlights will show you, because that's just work for you. And some of it's helpful. Some of it, if it's like, how does magic work here? Does it cost anything? How does tech work here? What powers a Jaeger? I don't know. But like, the characters don't need to know that. And so kind of realize that you're just illuminating the world for them to see the world. And anything that's out of that field of view isn't really required. until it comes into their field of view, in which case then you do that work, right? Then it's, oh shit, there's dragons. How do the dragons work? What's a direwolf? I'm giving these kids direwolves. What is this thing? Oh, what's a White Walker? How does that happen? Huh, I don't get it. You know, and then sometimes it's liberating to be able to work that way. It'll bite you in the ass if you're like lost. And it's like, oh, polar bears. Let's just not talk about this anymore. Because I didn't solve that problem and we don't have time to.
I can do an hour on Lost just by myself.
Yeah, I mean, and I
think it's one of the worst things that ever happened to television. But
And I think it's one of the best.
I love
There
it
you
to
go,
death.
see?
I love it to death, but it's very much, we made it up as we
So it makes a horse race.
I've gotten good at going easy on myself for writing what I'm not supposed to be writing. Like I'm always, even though I'm supposed to be outlining or building a Bible to share, if there's something that I need to write, even if it's dialogue or a scene or something I know I need later, I just put it at the bottom of the document, you know. And it's all this stuff is living documents, and sometimes inspiration, you know, I'm a little all over the place, and then you can always go back and finish it. So if you're writing and trying to figure out, you know, just do what feels right at that moment.
We get hired to write Bibles, and if we have international clients, they're expecting like a 70 to 125 page document, like that much stuff.
Wow.
If we're writing our own Bible, we suddenly, this is called a mini Bible, we just call it a Bible. It'll be like 12 to 25 pages worth of stuff.
Yeah.
But the answer is pretty much what Mark said. If you have done development work and you can sit down and then write your movie, your TV show, your episode, your whatever, then you've done enough Bible work to write one. It may not keep you going forever. You're going to need more stuff. You are going to run into the polar bear or whatever. But, and then just conversely, sometimes we do, Joe Casey named this, so pardon the language, but he calls it the shit draft. But sometimes we just do a shit draft before we do any Bible work. We sit down and write that pilot without enough information, because that will illuminate what you've got to do in the Bible build. And then we know we're never going to use that pilot, probably not even part of it. But that's a good way to also open the door. Interesting.
Yeah, I kind of do a hybrid of that, because I kind of will do like a loose outline to figure out what I need to figure out, and then the same thing, if dialogue occurs to me, if there's something that I'm thinking about, I'm all over the place, I put that somewhere else to the side. I'm kind of doing a little bit of simultaneous, and then I'll build the world until I feel like my questions that I need answered in order to proceed and go forward are done, and then know that more will come up as I'm writing, and that I'll have to stop and think about how the F does this even work in the first place. Okay, wait, why is there a polar bear? And then, you know.
And just to jump in real quick, another important thing is that Bibles are not just collections of facts. Like every story is theme-based. Theme is kind of more critical than any amount of wallpaper or paint you can put on top of it, which is what a lot of these details are. So pre-Bible, we also do a ton of work about what are the operational themes of the series, what are the operational themes of the protagonist and the antagonist, what are the operational themes, you know, for overall, for an episode, for an arc, and then we start figuring out what the wallpaper and paint of the Bible is.
Have you guys ever found that you didn't know what the theme was until you were like halfway through the thing? I guess for you, like, given how much of that work in a 100-page document you gotta give to Japan, I'm sure you've gone through that stuff before?
We love wallpaper and paint. Let's be honest, we like the details, that's the fun. But again, Joe Casey, he doesn't deserve any credit, but he gets more credit. He's just obnoxious, and one day he walked in, he's like, "I'm done with plot," he declares. And I'm like, well, we're writers, so I don't know what that means. But what he was getting at was he's tired of constructing by plot, and so we switched to thematic outlining. We don't do any plot outlining, we outline theme, and we do it backwards. So we're starting with the resolution of the theme of either the episode or whatever, and then we stack backwards thematically what has to unwrap to get you there. And so now we do Bible work kind of the same way. So first it's everything that's underpinning it, and then, you know, if you do Wizard of Oz, it's really about you already have what you need. That's the last idea. So right before that, Dorothy can't have what she needs or can't perceive that. And right before that, she needs to be around other people who don't have what they need but get it. So theme, theme, theme. You don't ever get to witches, you don't get to munchkins, you don't get to emerald cities or roads until after. And then you go, you know what would break this theme work really well is a witch. and then you put that wallpaper up. So we've tried to start doing Bibles that way. We've been doing it about 4 years. It's working pretty well. So talk to me again in 2 years, we'll be doing something else and be like, that Dean stuff was garbage. I like it much better, and I was not happy about it, but now I wouldn't do it some other way. Yeah.
That's all post-world, that's post-Bible in terms of plotting, Steve, or?
Well, now we're doing Bibles the same way because things are about what they're about. They're not about the trappings of the details. The details are the pretty stuff. So even a Bible, you need to go, this is about you can't get what you want, and if you do, you're not going to like it. Maybe that's your core theme. So then the Bible needs to reflect a world where you can't get what you want. So what are the ways to keep things? Tell me a way, what's a thing that would keep you from getting what you want? What's something that keeps you from getting what you want in your life? Either of you. Quick.
The law.
A what?
The law. That's a great answer.
But suddenly, so immediately your world is law-based, right? That's huge. That's very different than a vigilante kind of world build. So everything's going to be law-based. You know, your next door neighbors are going to judge you based on how your house is kept up or whatever. Details come from the theme, and they answer the questions themselves. You know you need a law world because that's what keeps you from what you want. So the theme illuminates stuff a lot faster than just trying to stack up Lego blocks and go, oh, this looks like a dragon world or whatever.
Right. And I'm surprised at how much in comic books, anyway, I am writing backwards from either a splash that I know, you know, I need to, that last page has to sell the next issue, but even in terms of arcs and other things, it's always important to know where that car is going to go.
Yep.
You just broke my world in half, Stephen Seagle.
Yeah. I'm telling you, we didn't do it this way at all until 4 years ago, and now we're like, what were we doing?
What did plot do to Joe to ruin him?
Well, it was because we were working on the Marvel cartoons.
Yeah.
Marvel, well, not to be mean, but the writers' rooms are stacking things up from the beginning,
Yeah.
and then you get to the beat before the end, and you go, oh, none of this works, and then you throw it all out.
Yeah.
And so we said, how about if we start here?
Start at the end, yeah.
And then Marvel's like, that doesn't work. And then after 2 weeks, Marvel was doing that, on our shows at least.
Sure, yeah. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So when you have a Bible, like for example, with Castle Rock, when you have so much rich material that's already there and things that you're really excited to get started on, how do you choose where to start and what to show when there's just so much that you could show right away, but it could be overwhelming and confusing, and maybe the answer's theme?
It's theme.
Did everybody hear the question?
Right, it's when there's so much data and information, how do you choose how to disseminate what
Where
you
to
want,
start, right.
or how to start? It's it can be theme or it's character, and it's never plot. I mean, I still think that I'm a character first writer because it's who's your protagonist in this world. We knew going into it we wanted it to be about this guy who was from a town that he should not have been from. Like, I'm not sure if you've been to Maine. Maine is not the most diverse place in the world. So it's like I said, Henry Deibert is going to be this black kid who's adopted by this family who hated the town that he was from and has to come back. He's forced to come back to it. And that character began to determine the kinds of stories we were going to tell. And how we tell it about this man who seems to have a vacancy in his memory. What happened? My dad died. People think it's my fault. I don't remember any of it. And I have this blank spot in my life that has been driving me for the rest of my life to answer questions that I haven't been able to answer, to fight feudal battles, to be a death row attorney. And every client of mine dies because I'm surrounded by death. Like, character became the dividing rod through which we navigated all that stuff. And like, how much do we keep, how much do we lose, what makes sense, what attaches to that spine of that protagonist story. I think it did subconsciously also be about theme, because most of the stuff that I just mentioned was also thematic. And I think when you're working from character, a theme subconsciously works its way in there, and you begin to answer both of those questions at the same time. But plot will never do that for you, you know. And we sat there for a long time, just like, all right, well, now we got Bill Skarsgård in the basement. Why is he there? Who is he? What does he do? Is he just like a really handsome tennis pro who's kind of like lost and wandered into Shawshank? Like, is he evil? Is he the devil? Is he from a parallel universe? Is he whatever? And like, finding the answer to those questions were all about Henry's story. Like, how do those answers reflect onto Henry's story? And how do they make those deeper? Otherwise, without some compass to follow, without some North Star, it just becomes shit we thought was cool, and then it's bright.
Yeah. And also, just real quick, the character is theme. Everything you said is thematically based, as you said, and what happens in Castle Rock. And like the Wizard of Oz, if you go, my final point is you already have what you need, then your main character needs to not have what she needs until the end of the story. So that's telling you where to start. I'm going to start with her. In that case, you go, here's everything you need, and she's like, I hate everything I have. And then she goes somewhere else and has nothing, and stacks up stuff, and nothing does it for her, right? And then suddenly, some stranger, shouldn't be talking to strangers, is like, you already had your way to get there. And she goes back and she loves everything she had at the beginning, which she said she didn't love. So character is theme will help you.
At least in TV, and probably less so in comic, but at least in TV, you see it all the time in pilots, where the very first scene is just the protagonist doing what they do every day to show the status quo as quickly and as efficiently as possible, because that's the thing that's about to get broken.
Who else? Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Once you feel you have a strong character, a clear theme you want to explore, having never written the Bible, I'm just curious, what do you think are the most important components of that Bible that should emotionally resonate with the reader? What are the most essential pieces to that Bible in your experience?
That's a good one.
I mean, so the Bibles that people pay us to do have sections that are fairly standard. We do a section on characters, so protagonist, antagonist, supporting cast. Lots about the protagonist, less about the antagonist, little bits about the supporting cast, because again, you can get lost in all this stuff. So it's more about going, the protagonist is all about these things. Here's some things that play against that. Here's where the push and pull is going to come from their quest, their dilemma, their journey. So, a few pages of that. We talk about the physical world, the tangible world, what are the details of it. If it's not just, it's New York City and nothing is different than the New York City you know, then you have to explain all of it in a way that somebody can get quickly. We do a section on operational themes for episodes, sometimes called story engines. We do sample episode springs that might come up if it's for a TV show. We do visual development, because one of us can draw. Haha, Duncan. Just to help see it sometimes, and sometimes we don't. Like animated shows, weirdly enough, sometimes you lock yourself in by drawing things out. So for animated shows, we don't always give visuals. What? So those are just some of the basic chapters that are in all of them, and then different jobs on different things.
Yeah, I think it's also, is this document for public consumption or your consumption?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
Because 9 times out of 10, unless you're being hired to deliver unto somebody a Bible, it's development work you're doing for yourself. The thing that people will see is the pilot you write out of it, or the comic book that goes to your editor, or what have you. But if it's just for you, then you get to decide to a certain degree how much you think you need to have done in there. There probably needs to be character stuff, because that's why we show up every week or every month. There probably needs to be some world stuff so that you understand for yourself the parameters and the dimensions of that world you're living in. There probably needs to be, here's what the first story is, and break that down as discreetly as you can, beat by beat by beat. And then there also needs to be the why I'm telling this story. Like, I remember when I was first pitching my first TV show, I had the Bible, I had like my 15 pages, my pitch, whatever, and my agent said, I need a segment in here, because this is the public facing part of it. Why me? Like, why am I the guy to tell this story? Why am I the only person who can tell this story? That's fundamentally, to a certain degree, not true, because it was like, I'm adapting some story. What does it mean to me?
But it is true, it's that frame of reference.
It's that frame of reference. It's like, yes, there's a dozen people who can do it. Here's where my version is the best. And it's because I am the person that I am. And I think that again, if this is a document that other people are going to see, it's a different thing. But if it's just for you, it's what you feel you need to be able to write. No more, no less.
Anybody else? Right here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll come back to her. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm coming from more novel print, where publishers now, the difference between building a world and creating a franchise. And I don't know if that's really a creative thing or a business thing or a marriage of them both.
So she's asking about the difference between building a franchise and building a world for world building purposes.
I mean, that can be a trap, right? Like everyone wants the the shared universe thing that happened is definitely a double-edged sword. But
Can't stop Cruise's Mummy thing. Tom Cruise's Mummy thing.
I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, if Robert Downey Jr. doesn't embody Tony Stark Iron Man, maybe that cinematic universe fizzles. You know, that was lightning in a bottle that wasn't on the page.
It wasn't in the script either, right? They were writing
Yeah,
the script on set.
That's
they
were vamping that, and that's what you.
It happens all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think I've been paid now. I enjoy the work. I've done some Star Wars work. I've done some Marvel work, and you know, at the end of the day, I can only be responsible for the story I'm telling. You know, I know it costs good money now. The comic books are $4 and change, almost $5 now. It's got to just be a story on its own legs, and you know, the fun thing is trying to figure out how you can sort it into something bigger. But I think aiming for that is kind of, that's a trap.
But ultimately, I don't think for vernacular there's much difference between building a world and building a franchise.
Yeah, franchise means you got lucky.
We get to do more of these.
Franchise is a successful world built, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
That's good.
I'm a huge fan of Neil Gaiman's Sandman books. And there's lots of genius in those 70 some odd issues. I think the chief of which is Neil built himself a world in which he could tell whatever story he wanted to tell in any mode he wanted to tell it. And like that's to a certain degree how you build a franchise, right? You're building a thing that can tell more stories. It's the delivery system for content. Some things only require one story. I introduced a screening of Pitch Black the other day, and I'm like, you know what? Remember when you could just make one good movie? And like, they should have just made one good movie. Because I don't need those other 2 Riddick movies at all. Just make one good one and go home. Some things don't demand more of that story. But if you're a novelist, then yes, they want to sign you to a 3-book deal, and they want to make sure that there's some trilogy you can put on a shelf, and I get it. But that job is to then build yourself the framework that allows you to find new story and tell the things that then interest you as a storyteller, right? Like that's the magic of Sandman. Neil wanted to talk about slavery. Boom. Neil wants to talk about Shakespeare. Boom. Neil wants to talk about this. Boom. Transgender. Boom. Everything could be contained in the vessel that was Sandman. And that's the genius of it. And if you can find a thing that lets you also tell all the stories you want to tell, a world that is a canvas for you, that's the job.
Yeah. If you're talking to a publisher, the first book has to be extremely well built. And then the springboard for the franchise, in quotation marks, is really just a couple of sentences about a future extrapolation. So be very careful about the first one, and then just make sure there's a structure that would support more, but don't get in there yet.
Okay, you,
Okay,
the cool gloves, look at those gloves.
I'm not sure if this is more on the like actual story side of things, but like if there's something like about the actual world that's important to the story, like what do you think are some good ways to like introduce that to the audience without just having an exposition dump?
Did everybody hear that? How do you introduce the pieces that you think are the most important in your Bible without having some sort of exposition dump? Which is an excellent part, by the way. Go ahead, Amanda.
I mean, this is where you want to get into like the show don't tell adage of if there's something important to your world, then immediately if you can try to visually show the rules of the world or show somebody breaking the rules of the world and or not breaking it, but like hitting up against it, I would say that's probably the best way, because you're right, you don't want somebody just going, and in this world, the way that the magic works is this, and this, as you well know, person who has grown up in this world and would organically know this. So, yeah, just let it, introduce it, casually know that you don't have to get everything in right away. You can allude to things and give yourself all the space throughout all your story or your stories to get all the, because as long as you know the rules and as long as everybody's following them, if something's confusing, you've got to make sure to show it. You've got to make sure to explain it in some way. But there's a lot of things that you can just let ride, and people will learn it as they go.
Yeah, build a scene around that important thing. Whatever that important thing is, make sure your characters can interact dramatically with it, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, you want to know more about the world than you reveal, for sure. Like if we're in your lawless world, and your neighbors are your judges, It's going to be terrible if you go, don't do that because our neighbors are judging us. It's going to be great if you do something and then we leave and then we come back and there's a ticket on your car from your neighbor. You know, just the tiniest piece of the world is as good as explaining the world.
And I think a lot of it is also in the characters you choose to prism that story through. You know, it is the reason why the most popular version of protagonist is the fish out of water, right? Is the, I am now coming to this place for the first time, explain to me these rules. It's Neo, right? Like Neo wants this world, doesn't understand the rules of this world, and like, choose these pills, Neo, and let me explain to you how this fucking world works for 10 minutes and give you most of those rules. There's a reason why it's like Luke Skywalker, who's this kid on this fucking planet who doesn't understand that much about the world around him, and the old wise dude comes and says, let me tell you about this world, buddy, and show you some shit, so that now we, as the audience, are learning along with the protagonist, so it's not just, I mean, my least favorite version of this is in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? When Indiana Jones has to get information about the Ark, like, and it's, how do we get this to the audience?
Yeah,
I know, let's have a couple army guys just come in and talk for 8 minutes, and then that's it. Like, what is it? Oh, it's, hey, an army that holds in front of him is invincible. Great, thanks, moving on. And then there's no more exposition in the rest of that fucking movie. There's the army guys for 8 minutes, he's dropping pipe, and then moving on.
And they actually, like, literally took out the encyclopedia and then showed the encyclopedia.
Like, there's a picture of it right in the air, right? Yeah.
It looks pretty badass. Drop the book on the desk and all the dust flies off,
Totally.
all that kind of stuff.
There's probably a more graceful way to do that takes twice as long. Like, fuck it, guys, we got a bunch of shit we gotta do.
Actually, I watched the new Twin Peaks thing, which a lot of people hated, and I hated it while I was watching it, and now I love it because I'm still thinking about it. Like, I'm trying to figure out what that world was, what did all that stuff mean. There's sometimes that's maddening where you're like, I don't think it meant anything, but I think it meant something to David Lynch, and I don't know what it was, and I'm still trying to crack it.
Well, do you know what's weird about that? I've been thinking about it too, and is it alright if we fully spoil it?
I don't know how you would because I don't know what it's about.
I think his character, I mean, look, I think his characters came to our universe.
Oh, I think so too, but I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either. But like, they're definite visual, but it really messed me up.
Yeah.
Because,
that last episode, I was like, I was throwing stuff at the TV, and now, months later, I'm still thinking about that last episode, and I've watched like 500 other TV shows, I'm not thinking about them at all.
Also, something Mark said about, like, hey, I don't need to have more of this, it just needs to be a story. If anyone would have told me that in 2020, I would have loved a Watchmen sequel, I guess, or a series of stories that was built off that book, I would have gone, I guess that's not the craziest thing I ever heard, but I would have lost that bet.
Yeah.
I thought that show was incredible. I saw the reviews.
Yeah, and like the building of that world, like I have a couple friends who were in that room, took them 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like, it took a year to build the world before they wrote the pilot. And then
God bless HBO and HBO.
sounds about right.
They wrote the pilot, they shot the pilot, then they came back, reconvened the room, and then did the rest of the show.
That is so cool.
But and just figuring out like where those influences come from, and the room that you have to help build those, and like, hey, you know, David, I love you, but I bet you don't know a ton about like Tulsa. You know, I bet you like the inward sort of the intricacies of the African American experience are not not at the tip of your tongue. But he was like, I want to learn. I'm going to build a room that can help teach me, and I'm going to read as much as I can read, and I'm going to figure out a way to make this the Trojan horse that I want it to be, and I want to make a show about black pain, and look what I did. And it's glorious and wonderful, and it's still Watchmen. It's still at its core what Watchmen is and what a Watchmen is about, which is about power.
And as an adult and an older person, I feel about that the way I did as a kid when the first X-Men came out. I went to the theater like, oh, this is going to stink like all the other comic book movies, but I love comic books. I'm going to see my X-Men movie. I don't care how terrible it is. And then they didn't screw it up. I mean, it's not great, but they didn't screw it up.
That was proof of concept that this future could happen.
Right, sure.
And that people would show up.
Yeah, that people would show up. I remember the Chinese theater that night wrapping up Brian Posehn in tinfoil. He was Colossus for a few minutes. So the ushers asked him to sit down where they were going to start the movie.
I had quit the X-Men, and I was like, I'm not going to go see that movie. I went and saw it anyway, and I liked it. I was like, oh, well, it must be pretty pretty good if I like it right now.
My heart breaks for you though with that bad timing of just that's the other thing about these comic books or shared universes that the movies, TV, so many things can happen. A sale, your executive leaves, your thing is orphaned.
Yeah.
So much has to go right. It's like Plinko, you know, like you can have a great story and still have it get super super jacked.
Way in the back.
Yeah, what are some of your, one of you mentioned Indiana Jones being your least favorite, what are some favorite built worlds that you enjoy or take inspiration from?
The Prisoner.
Yeah, that's very
TV
good.
show. The original Prisoner TV show.
Yeah.
I would say for me, off the top of my head, the thing that I'm still obsessing over is Watchmen. I think they did such a good job. That's something you could learn a lot. They put every gun on the mantle early. There was even the craziest stuff that they did. It was all there for you at the top.
No, I mean, I would agree with that. I'm not gonna compete with that right now.
I think in terms of how they give you information about the world, I think the first Terminator does a pretty incredible job of like, you have your viewpoint character who doesn't understand the world, you have your expert who like drops into the world, and even the flashbacks are not giving you more than they need to, they're more mood than information. And there is a scene where a guy will just tell you everything you need to know about the world, but it's constructed so that we don't believe him. Like it turns Kyle Reese into an unreliable narrator in a way that's kind of wonderful and magical. But I think as far as giving information to an audience exactly when they need to have it, I think that does it as well as anybody.
12-year-old me would say Star Wars, the first one, which is now the fourth one, I guess.
Right.
Because when I saw that, I believed every single new place I went with Luke Skywalker and Phillies.
I'm a big fan of what they did with Veronica Mars, frankly, because that's not the real world. And they built that very carefully and constructed all of it by mood and theme and character, and it's terrific. Go, if you can find Veronica Mars on Hulu or whatever, highly recommended.
And in comic books, I think what Jonathan did with his collaborators on House of X and Powers of 10, boy, that was a lot of world building that I admired it.
Okay, one last question, then we gotta go. We're out of time. Anybody? Okay, we're out of time.
Hey,
So
thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming. Let's get a last word. Where you guys are gonna be today?
Last worlds are awesome. I'm doing a Star Wars panel here in about an hour, and then another panel on somewhere, Crisis on Infinite Earths at like 4:30. And I'm just wandering aimlessly for the rest of the day, and I'm doing a signing at Golden Apple tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Nice.
That's it.
This is terrible. I'm downstairs. I have a booth. I don't know where it is. It has a Ben 10. It has a Baymax. It has my book Get Naked, us banners. So look for that. It's at the other end of the hall somewhere.
I'm just as bad because I was racking my mind to remember my booth number. But I'm in Artist Alley. I'm next to my wife's illustrator Cat Staggs, and yeah, good luck.
I'm a real comics bro. I know what table I'm supposed to be at. It's B26, and if I'm not there, I'm in the bathroom or something.
I can see Jerry's banner from my table. So if you find Jerry, look diagonally to the far corner, and that's me.
Hey, here's a world we could build. How about Earth? Let's start paying attention to Earth.
We're tearing
pretty
down that
messed
world.
up. Yeah, I know.
We are.
Yeah, the reboot's coming soon.
Thank you so much for filling up the room. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, guys. That was a lot of fun.
That was great.